me and the executive ministers that were at the meeting with you, Gary, we were all blown away. We were thinking, where has this man been all of our lives? I had a moment of inspiration to say, yeah, this is the guy we needed at our annual meeting for this time. The man's written 7 books. Isn't that timely and clever? The man has been educated at Talbot Theological Seminary on the campus of Biola, a fine institution, if I do say so myself. But he's not just an academic. Dr. Gary Comer's also got the practical experience. He's been a pastor, including mega churches. He's also been involved with region work, kind of like our own, being a coach, like he's doing now in miniature. Look, he's mission-minded, and he wants us to be. Friends, that's the only hope for our church. That's the next thing for the kingdom of God. And when I say mission-minded, I don't just mean, across the miles. I mean having a mission mindset in our own backyards. We've got to get out of, some of our churches are in more of a club mentality. We've got to have that same heart for missions that many of our churches do across the miles. So
I thought maybe I could just introduce myself a little bit more, just share a little bit more so you get to know me and a little bit from where I'm coming from. I love really my full-time ministry is with my nonprofit ministry, Soul Was for Ministry. So that's really what I do. I work with pastors and churches and their networks and denominations. So that's my work. It's my calling. In a way, God kind of backed me into all of this. I was a pastor, like many of you, over a church. I had planted a couple churches. And ended up going back to school to do a doctorate at one point, and it was interesting during that time. God did a rerouting in my life, and really, in a way, moved me away from being a generalist to being a specialist, and so. My heart and focus has really been the mission development of the church, the kind of the mission health of the church, the kind of the mission formation of the church. Sometimes I like to use that word formation because it's not this kind of ancillary out there thing, kind of the tack on, to the end of our discipleship, but it's really meant to be something core and central, to who we are. And so part of what I'm trying to do is to kind of help churches and help pastors and leaders and their teams to really, in a way, develop that. How do you build that? How do you develop that? I teach evangelism and disciple making strategies at Talbot Seminary. So I am an adjunct professor. And so this is my 6th year there. And, I got hired because they read my books. They heard about me, and they heard about Soul Whisperer, and they heard about Remission, and I got hired by them. But I want to tell you, it's such an interesting setup. I have 28 students this fall, 28, and half of them are in person. And then the other half are up on the wall, zooming in, get this, not just from all over the country, but all over the world. And so it's just fascinating to lead a class like that. And, I don't get somebody from every country all the time, but it's amazing how many countries we're starting to knock off as far as people who are, whether they're doing missions work or they're living there or whatever. So it is really interesting, and I've loved the opportunity. It's given me a chance to kind of see what's happening. I've done some international work, but it's like you can never even know enough, and what's happening in the different regions of the world. But it definitely infuses a lot of learning, into things. And then I'm going to share the reason why I wrote the 3 books I wrote, okay? And then I want to open it up and just let you ask me any questions. Okay, so if you have any questions about anything I just shared or whatever, just jump in. But yeah, I wanted to, just tell you, I ended up writing. This is the first one, Soul Whisperer. Okay, Soul Whisperer, and the subtitle is really significant. Why the church must change the way it views evangelism. Okay, and so I still believe in that today, very, very much. So when I wrote it, I was on staff at a large church in their outreach ministry, and I was also schooling at Talbot Seminary in my doctorate program. God had been showing me some things, but one of the things at the church level that I was seeing was how many people really, in a way, had just rejected evangelism outright. Certainly the way they thought it was to be pursued, right? This cold kind of one-hit wonder, get out, talk to a stranger somewhere, or go out to a mall, or go, whatever, and people, or just talk to somebody you bump into. And, I thought, wow, we have such a negative perception there. The missional camp people, which there was plenty at the church that I was at, they saw, the evangelist person just running over the needs of the very people the needs they were trying to meet of people in the community. And so they didn't see it positive either. So part of the reason why I wrote Soul Whisperer, okay, with crazy title, right? And it's named after Jesus, okay? It's modeled after Jesus. I was trying to re-enlist and recapture Christians for the mission of God, okay? For the calling, the commission of God. That's why I wrote it in the way I did, and it's popularly written. And I am really trying to draw them into something that looks entirely different, it's far deeper. And so when you think about what we had in kind of the history of the church, we've had what I've called the telling paradigm. So what are we supposed to do as the church and church members? We're supposed to go tell people about Jesus. And so kind of the part of the challenge with that is that whole approach just doesn't kind of really work that well in a postmodern culture, of where we are, and it doesn't do anything to kind of help Christians to know how to go about this in a way that is actually fruitful and effective, and really, in a way, kind of relatable and real and authentic. And so, anyways, so what I said is we need to shift from the telling paradigm to an influence paradigm, to an influence. We're not asking the question, how do I tell my friend or neighbor or somebody I meet, how do I tell them? But what's involved in actually influencing somebody to believe and follow? What's involved in that process? And depending on the person's starting point, that can look very, very different. And so Soul Whisperer actually kind of maps that out and develops that. And it teaches skills, and it teaches a relational approach where the disciple-making mandate could actually be fulfilled. You see what I'm saying? We're not called to tell people. We're called to make disciples, right? To make disciples. And so that's that one. Remission, and you have that the book on the on the cover. This one is a leadership training book. Really, I'm wanting to help leaders to see how they could shape their culture, their church culture, in a way that their body, their members, would be more effective for the mission of God. And so how do you shape a culture where the body interfaces well with others? Well, there's an awful lot to say about that from the leadership perspective on what we're doing. So I wrote remission along that line, and remission kind of double entendre, double meaning Yeah, remission, we're re-looking at mission, but remission meaning health. We want to bring health to the body. And if we want to bring health to our bodies, mission's going to have to rise. Mission formation is going to need to happen. So, and then Game of Pulpits. So here we go. Here's the one that releases on September 1. The subtitle, yeah, the 7 voices vying for the kingdom. Who will win and why? And so, you know, I run into a lot of different thinking that's out there in the church world. And I run into different, you know, ideologies and philosophies. And so in bumping up against those, you know, I really began to kind of develop some thoughts about kind of what's happening in the broader scope of the church. I have all stripes of students at Talbot, all stripes, okay? So, and also I'm involved I work with almost all the denominations. I mean, I've worked with a Pentecostal group in Texas, you know, I mean, just all over the place. And so it's definitely given me some thoughts and perspectives. And so I really wanted to write a broader scope book where we could learn from one another, where we could see our own voice and, you know, what it is that we're championing. And you will see yourself in this book. You'll see yourself in multiple places. I'm in 3 of the 7 voices. And so you'll see yourself, and it's very thoughtful. It's a mirroring oriented book. But of course, my heart is to ultimately see the church expand the gospel. It's not a book for you to agree on everything. It's not a book about consensus. It's a book about sharpening you where God's planted you. So anyways, those are the 3, each of one kind of an assignment from the Lord, I thought. But I thought I'd open it up and just let you ask any questions. You could ask about my ministry, anything at all. Interact. Yeah.
All right. Well, so we're going to open it up, folks. And yep, Phil, we've got you. So we'll do that. But I appreciated what you said about evangelism and its place, and that I think the phrase you use, you know, we're running over people's needs to get to whatever we think evangelism is supposed to mean. So thank you for that wonderful nugget. Phil.
Andy, I'll just share a thought on that. So here we are. That group, the missional camp, would think that's what we're doing. But I want to tell you today, there's almost been such a wide scale rejection of evangelism is that we're not running over anybody. See, we're not running over anybody because we've overreacted to our perception of what evangelism is. And so that's why I said why the church must change the way it views evangelism. We must change the perception of it. And we also must give our members a relational type of process approach that they can actually do and that they could see fruit. And so we will be talking about that here at the annual meeting. So,
yeah, and thank you. Gary's the one that came up with Kindled Calling. I wish I could take credit for it. But if we called this conference an evangelism conference, people, well, they wouldn't be heading for the exits. They just would never.
It's not going to be good.
And there are a lot of people that don't know what it means, and I have to explain it, and that's fine. I'd rather them not know what it means and have some curiosity than make assumptions about what evangelism is and then be out.
Yeah, and Kindled Calling's wider too. Yeah, we will be talking about that mission side, and we're talking about ourselves and our calling, right? You know, the kindledness of God, what God is doing in us. So I praying that the Lord, you know, meets us in all that too. Yeah. Yeah, the idea of shifting from the telling paradigm to an influence paradigm, where we really are asking, we're not asking how do I tell a person, we're asking how does spiritual influence, how does faith formation happen in a person's life? How can it happen in people that, you know, are friends? And I like to separate. I honestly don't like the word proclamation to use for the body, proclamation. I don't like the feel of it, because I want them to think differently about it, and being really much more of a relational journey with somebody, where with Soul Whisperer, I say, hey, the conversation really starts with them. It doesn't start with us and everything we know. It really starts with understanding where they are, and then eventually being able to understand that, and being able to eventually speak to where they are, and to be able to share Christ in a way that's meaningful to their life. So, we kind of get into that. But proclamation for the pastor and the preacher, yeah, one of the things that is effective, and this is really funny to say this, if you're listening, evangelism, it can be effective from the pulpit. Okay. It can be. The listener can get everything they need. Now, I know churches, pastors decide on what they're going to do with that. Not everybody's doing altar calls. There's lots of different ways to actually move people along as far as a faith decision. But some of the challenge, is having non-believers in your congregation, right? So, that's kind of where we're getting back to the mission of the church, where people are engaged in those relationships, right? But you can reach people through proclamation. But with believers, I like to call it dynamic process. Dynamic process. It's dynamic in that it really treats each individual for exactly who they are and where they are. And it's a relational process. It's a journey alongside somebody, learning how to be committed to somebody and to walk with them and to continue a relationship, even though that person doesn't believe everything you do. Miguel, I was going to answer Miguel's question. He had asked, will you please define mission of God? The Missio Dei, Latin, for the mission of God. It's really been used quite a bit by those missional thinkers. And it's broad scoped, I think, with a lot of people out there. Certainly, the mission of God includes the Great Commission. It includes the call of Christ to go to the people groups of the world and to make disciples and to raise them up under his teaching. And so it includes that. But for a lot of people who talk about the mission of God, the Missio Dei, there's an awful lot of people who are going to have a broader scoped view of, what it is that God wants to do in the world, and Christ reconciling, all things unto himself. And so, there's going to be a broader scope as far as, kind of looking at how, God would intervene in our world through us, his body, and through believers who care for others, who love for others, who and sometimes it can be love and compassion, and sometimes it can be activism as far as kind of what's happening in the world and the systems. So I just want to say there's a broad use of mission of God, but it certainly clearly includes the evangelistic disciple making mandate. We'll ask, what are these 7 voices? Well, they're really, in a way, ministry thrusts, ideological kind of voices that have been out there in the church, and they're major ones. And I kind of define them, and so you've got them. I'll real quick, the redesigners. Okay, so that's really the voice championing innovative change. Okay, so we have some who are redesigners, and if you're like somebody who's got graphs up on your whiteboard, you're figuring out how to do something different. Wow, we need to do this at our church, and we're going to do this different. We're going to be more effective, and and you're kind of flirting with redesigning. But there's a lot of people out there who are championing innovative change in the church. but I addressed the charismatics. The Pentecostal wave is one of the major voices. The evangelicals, championing the cultural advance. The Pentecostals championing the move of the Spirit, okay? And then we've got the Christian capitalists championing best kingdom resources, okay? Christian capitalists. The mega flagshippers, okay? The mega church championing church service attraction. Spiritual renewalists championing biblical spiritual renewal. The spiritual formation people are there. And then the last voice is the nuclear options. Okay, so championing radical restructuring. So yeah, that's what I did with the book, and bumping into some of these. So anyways, there's plenty there to chew on.
If I could follow up on that, are you familiar with Avery Dulles' book, came out years ago, Models of the Church, where he looks at different theological models within Christendom? I was wondering if you relate to that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people, when they do see the seven voices, they're a lot of times they are thinking about, kind of theological bents, like, theological angles, because we are the whole church of Christianity is divided along those lines. We have our things that we champion, that we emphasize, right? Like, oh, this particular doctrine or this particular practice, this particular model, it can be all of that. But what I tend to do is really look at some of the major voices, and I probably look at it a little bit more practically, a little bit more. It does get into some of the theology, but I'm not really parsing out the different theological lines. I think that would be a very interesting work for somebody to do, but God didn't call me to do that. I think it's a very academic work. But anyway, Stephen, I appreciate you commenting on that. Yeah, there's a lot on it, a lot on models, a lot on theologies out there.
Ask you about, you'd made a comment on formation and how I have a feeling I know where you might go with this, but it seems like we put a lot of these wonderful spiritual tools in a toolbox and we kind of leave them there and keep some borders. But could you just talk about spiritual formation a little bit and how we might get it wrong and how we get it right?
Well, the first thing I would say, and this is in Game of Pulpits. Like I have a number of spiritual renewalist friends. Okay. And by the way, I kind of tend to lump a lot of pastors into the spiritual renewalist voice, and partly because I say this about, the spiritual renewalists, Bible teaching pastors and also spiritual formation leaders, spiritual formation specialists. Sometimes those two groups are at odds a little bit with each other, there's the Bible teacher, but then that spiritual formation focus really gets into exercises, practices, some of the types of disciplines, or some of the times of ways to open ourselves to God, where the Lord, can do something. John Coe over at Talbot heads up the Spiritual Formation Institute. And I just got to say, I love listening to that guy teach, man. I mean, I just think he has so much to bring, to people as far as this relationship that we have with God. And so in a way, I really have loved the spiritual formation people, and of course I love the Word of God, so I love Bible teaching too. So I see all that, but I'll just tell you, in my Talbot class, I'm teaching, and I make a statement, and the statement really comes from my book Remission, but it talks about our spiritual formation, and in that I was really kind of saying that a lot of the focus of our spiritual formation, the sociological type of practices that we have in the church, end up really kind of leading us to be really in a way kind of more focused on ourselves, I questioned that in the class, and and eventually we went back and forth. The students are jumping in, and it turns into be this great conversation. Everyone's talking about spiritual formation and that, and we're going back and forth. But in the end, I ended up making a statement, and I said, you know what? If in the end it's all about ourselves, it's selfish. Okay, it's selfish. And so why do I think mission formation is so important in the church? Because mission formation is about being Christ-like, okay? Having the heart of the Father and being others focused, right? Others focused, the love for the lost. Mission ultimately is about love, And honestly, every one of us, and me too, my goodness, I can be so doggone selfish. I can be so focused on my own world and my own needs, my own walk with God, everything, and not get out of myself to realize that love extends big and wide, and we're here in a time. We're not just in any segue of timeline. We are in a time that has a context, a time when God's heart is to bring people into his kingdom because they're lost outside of him. And so our love has to extend there. I think otherwise we don't get the formation. We don't get the formation that is really truly Christ-like.
I wanted to touch just on your Soul Whisperer book and pick your brain for a minute. What was the biggest change or the most significant adjustment that you found to move from telling to influence?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. And so if I told you a little bit more of my history, I became a Christian out of a secular family, okay, when I was 21 in college. And immediately, a Christian grabbed me and discipled me to share my faith on the campus. And so weeks into, I had a pretty strong conversion. I was in the darkness, and you come into the light, and it's a big thing. So I was zealous. I wanted to share Christ with people. So I did 7 years of college ministry and was really the lead guy on 2 secular campuses, Long Beach State and Long Beach City College. But I did a lot of that kind of cold, just get out there, share the gospel with people. We'd go introduce ourselves. But as time progressed, Chris, I was seeing less and less response. I saw some real, I saw a real shift that was taking place. And so, I probably couldn't have put it in a research box or anything. It was just more observational. And but I got to tell you, the big turning point happened when God gave me the opportunity to journey with 2 skeptics. One was an atheist, and the other was a theistic skeptic, meaning that person believed in God, but didn't believe in Jesus, okay? Didn't believe Jesus was God. So I ended up spending time with these people every week. One, the atheist, that went 9 months of weekly meetings, and the other 6 months. Both ended up coming to faith 2 weeks apart. And when it happened, I was just like, I had never experienced anything like this before, and it really began to change my thinking on how faith formation can happen in a non-believer's life. I saw aspects of the relational dimension that that were critical. And Chris, you should know, in Soul Whisperer, and this is in all my books. it's in Game of Pulpits and Remission too. But the four progressions of a non-believer. These four progressions. What happened is, after they came to faith, I went up to my whiteboard and I diagrammed it. I said, God, that was incredible what just happened. I mean, the atheist, he was entrenched. His wife broke down in tears. She couldn't believe it. He's come into the faith, and God did some incredible things to break that thing open. There's a big story there. But I diagrammed these four progressions, and I said, you know what? Had they not gone through each one of them, they never would have come into the faith. And they were totally different people, but those progressions, you could see them in each of those. So I teach it. It's not the only skill or technique or formational type of structure. It's not the only one, because we teach multiple skills on connecting and also on how to share resonantly. Okay, like, we don't do that in the church. Like, how do you read your friend to know kind of how to share it in a way that they really hear it? So that Soul Whisperer, right? Soul Whisperer, how do you talk to that person, like, so personally, like you're talking to their soul, and so they actually hear it. It's very, very different approach, but it is really, I learned it from Jesus, and I've also learned it in my own experiences of doing it. So that's a long answer there, but it kind of, what I'm trying to do is saying, in a way, God showed me some things while kind of doing it. It was kind of like, I was engaged. I learned some things as I went, and then it's like, whoa, there's something there. There's something there that's really powerful. And now the way I teach evangelism, the relational evangelism process, I mean, every one of the classes at Talbot but one has saw people come to Christ. Most classes I've seen 2 people come to Christ, and that is only in 4 months of time of the students journeying with their friends. And are you going to be shocked by this? Many Masters of Divinity students do not have any relationships with unsaved people.
Yeah.
I can tell you in my own experience too, Gary, at Talbot, one of the professors, I don't think it was Gary McIntosh, one of your mentors, but I think it was another professor. They challenged us, give us two people, or put 2 people on your list and pray for those people. And I'm thinking, not a chance, especially my friend Dave. He's locked in, he'll never do it. And he came to faith in Christ before the semester was over. How about that? Prayer works.
Stephen, let's see. I do want to answer yours. Stephen's asking if you address how we approach various generations in our efforts to help them become Christ followers. As a baby boomer with sons and grandchildren, I realize we approach life quite differently as well with faith issues. Yeah, I do. I do. I have a chapter, the second chapter in the evangelicals of evangelicals in Game of Pulpits, that the second chapter there really addresses generations. And so, I kind of talk about the generations and give some guidance on that. I ask it, I wrote an article on reaching the younger crowd. The Great Commission Research Journal published that article, how research informs reaching the younger crowd. And so I did some study on that. One of the things that I ask with generations is two questions on generations. Where is there contrast, meaning what is different with the next generation? Like what's different? And then the other question is where do we have continuity? Okay. And so what do I mean by that? Meaning, well, where is there that deep human connection that transcends the generations, right? Continuity. Now, it could be continuity just between generations, where the same value is going into the next. That happens to be true right now with Gen Z. Okay, so the authenticity value did not begin with Gen Z. It really begins with Gen X. And so that's the big moment. I actually do a lot with, someone mentioned, it was Pastor Phil who mentioned our stories, our brokenness or whatever. Yeah, Soul Whisperer has my chapter, Bridge of Brokenness. And so I'm there, I am trying to teach people how to lean in to their life story and into their brokenness in a way that can be a bridge towards others and communicating the gospel and bringing the hope of the gospel to people. But as far as authenticity goes, in Soul Whisperer, I developed a skill. We called it the disclosure window. And I want to say that skill has led a lot of people to faith. A lot of people, but it requires something of the believer. It requires the believer to be honest about their life with a non-believer. You see, and I'm even vulnerable, honest, talk about their real stuff, sins, struggles, obstacles, fears, things they're facing, emotions. And of course, a lot of believers aren't really great at that. But when we grow in that, get out of our pretentiousness, the chance for connection with people, and especially younger generations, has just elevated tenfold. Yeah, everything is just raised. And so what you do need to do it in the right way. You don't just dump on people, right? So there is an appropriate time and an appropriate level of disclosure. But when it is done right from believers, the connectivity with them goes way up. And with that connectivity, that connection, you see that bond of connection, what we've seen is that the non-believing person reciprocates, right? They share back. So when they share back, then suddenly the conversation then really opens up as to really what faith means and what faith can do. And so that's where we've seen salvations happen. That's a powerful skill, but it's not the only one.
We should have that. Gary,